Hello again, everybody, and welcome into another edition here of the only sports talk show that really matters on IUP-TV. It's The Big Hit. We're talking hockey, we're talking football today. That's basically all you need to know. We'll start in the National Hockey League, preview the East and Western Conference, give players to watch, give our division winners as well, and then get a prediction of who makes it and wins the Stanley Cup this year in the NHL. And then we'll go back over to the other side of the studio, talk some National Football League, recap last week's action, and look at some surprising teams who remain undefeated about 5 games into the year, and then close the show out talking some IUP Crimson Hawks football. It was a good road contest against Seton Hill for the Crimson Hawks, but they've got a tough matchup coming up here in the Cole Bowl against Cal U. We'll do all that, and only then will greatness be achieved, right here on The Big Hit. Hi, everybody, and welcome into another episode here of The Big Hit on IUP-TV. So happy you've joined us for another week of sports talk here. We're flying through the semester about the midway point, guys, and that can only mean one thing. The National Hockey League season is here. The season started last week. We're going to preview each conference and each division here in our NHL preview. Very happy to welcome in Sean David Fritz to the set, Jacob Gilbert Enders, and my man Andrew Phillip Friend. We're very formal here on The Big Hit to start it off. And guys, we'll begin our NHL preview close to us here in the Eastern Conference. We'll begin in the Atlantic Division, where we're looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are in a rebuilding stage after not making the playoffs the past 2 seasons. They traded away, of course, Phil Kessel, one of the biggest moves of the offseason, but they made some changes in the administration, in the front office, hiring GM Lou Lamoriello and hiring Mike Babcock as well as their head coach. So looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs, do you think these moves are going to pay dividends this season, or is it more of a long-term type of approach here for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, first off, let me just start by saying I commend the Toronto Maple Leafs for making this move. Obviously, they're a storied franchise, one of the original 6, as you guys know. And they've had their fair share of struggles since the turn of the century, especially in these last couple of seasons. I think it was a tremendous move to bring in these 2 guys. They're both experienced guys at what they do, and their amount of work has really paid off for both of them. Both have won Stanley Cups. Lou Lamoriello in New Jersey in the early 2000s, and Mike Babcock in Detroit. I think it's a tremendous move by Toronto. That being said, I just don't think they have the assets right now on the roster to really make a push, no matter how well they're coached by Mike Babcock. I think this is more of a long-term thing, and I look for them to really just rebuild their NHL roster and their farm club. I think they're going to be a contender under this administration management, if you will, for many years to come. I really like the move a lot.
I would agree with that. Babcock and Lamoriello, as you said, have plenty of experience, 4 cups and 2 Olympic gold medals between them. And I like what they're doing because this is the sickest franchise in the NHL in terms of they really didn't have anything going for them even 1 year ago. But they brought in some new blood. They made some interesting trades. And Babcock and Lamoriello came out and said that they weren't going to rush any of their young talent, and they have plenty of it. So this year is not their year. Next year probably won't be their year either. But with Babcock and Lamoriello in the fold, I think that they will eventually become a powerhouse if they can develop those young prospects.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they definitely can. Do I believe that this season they're going to make any impact definitely on playoffs or anything like that? No, I don't believe that at all. However, I think that the moves that they did implement are definitely going to make them a better team all around for later in upcoming seasons, but not right now, no.
Yeah, and when you look at what Toronto did, I think they had really a good strategy in starting at the top with the people in charge and then kind of trickling down to your roster. If you have people in charge that you're comfortable with, know what they're doing, and obviously have a track record of success, that kind of is a way to springboard your team moving forward. But of course, looking at teams in the NHL, you have to have players to get it done. You have to have players to get it done on the ice and to win. You could have the greatest coaches in the world. If you don't have anybody to play on the ice, you're going to have a rough go. So let's look at the Atlantic Division and focus on some players you're going to watch here in this Atlantic Division.
For me, it's going to be Tyler Johnson. I think he had a breakout season last year, obviously playing on the triplets line with Nikita Kucherov and Andre Palat. All the crazy thing about these three players is that they're all still relatively very young guys. Like I said, Tyler Johnson had 29 goals last year, 43 assists. And all of his line mates, well, the triplets line they call it, they all had a substantial amount of points. They were all around the same area in terms of points, I think, which is really impressive. I think there are three good young hockey players. I single out Johnson because, like I said, he had 29 goals. I think he gets over that 30-goal mark this year. I look for Tampa Bay to be a contender, and I think they're going to need secondary scoring. It's going to come from guys like Tyler Johnson, Andre Palat, and Nikita Kucherov. I think they're a huge, huge part of Tampa Bay's success last year. I think they will be this year if Tampa Bay is successful. I really just like Tyler Johnson, though. I think he's going to have another huge, huge year for the Lightning.
I said Alexander Semin of the Montreal Canadiens. He was kind of an 11th hour signing by them, very low money for a player of his, talent. Nobody can deny that he's one of the most skilled players in the NHL, but in the past we've seen his dedication kind of wavering at times. However, they put him on a line on the second line there in Montreal with Alex Galchenyuk and Lars Eller, and these are two very skilled players in their own right, and that line has clicked so far in the preseason and in only the first few games of the regular season. However, I feel like this will really help the Canadiens if he can come through and be that player that he used to be, because we saw it last year in the playoffs. The Canadiens simply didn't have enough offense. The Lightning blew them out because the Lightning had all that offense, and the Canadiens simply couldn't keep up.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Justin Abdelkader. Right now he's really lighting up the lamp, and I like what he's doing. I think he can continue to produce, and that's really what the Red Wings need, a producer.
Absolutely. Looking at players, it's of course you have to have some individual success, but your line mates are a very important piece. And Sean, you mentioned the triplets line. Another year of those guys together, hopefully will pay dividends for them. Sometimes you're only as good as your line mates are, because if there's one star player on a line, teams can really focus in if you have threats on your wings and in the center as well. Really creates a big mismatch. So let's look at this Atlantic Division, close out our preview here of the Atlantic Division by taking a look at what the pecking order will be. Who finishes first, second, and third here in the Atlantic Division this season?
I'm just going to have to go with Tampa Bay. Obviously, they won the Eastern Conference last year. I think they win the Atlantic Division this year. I think they've got a tremendous amount of youth on this hockey team. They can score. They can obviously score goals. They can pile up the points. And they've got a pretty solid blue line, I would say, and guys like Victor Hedman, who's really come into his own recently. He's still a young guy, only 24 years old. Very, very impressive. Some of their other acquisitions from last year, Anton Strawman is back. Braden Coburn, who they acquired at the deadline last year, who are some good veteran guys to back up Hedman at the blue line. And Ben Bishop backstopping. I just think they're a very, very good hockey team. I think they're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and I look for them to really just pick up right where they left off.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is the Lightning's division to lose this year. You mentioned all the talent that they have. After them, I think the Canadiens are next in line with Carey Price, who's the reigning MVP, of course. But I'd like to say that I think the team that has a chance to break out in this division, who I think will challenge for a playoff spot, are the Florida Panthers. I think they have so much young talent with guys like Huberdeau, Aaron Ekblad, Barkov, all these young players. And another thing is they actually brought in Jaromir Jagr last year, and I think his veteran presence will improve their team. And the main thing is he's bringing back his mullet. I don't know if you guys heard that. He said he's going back to the mid-'90s style, and that can only bode well for the Panthers.
All right. I'm going to say the Bruins. I think they're the ones that are going to make it to the top. They're always a contending team every year. Then I'm going to have to say the Detroit Red Wings. I know I'm going off of what you guys are saying, but Detroit Red Wings, like I said, Justin Abdelkader really lighting up the lamp this year. I know it's only 2 games, but I still think that he can really produce for the Red Wings. Then obviously, as you said, the Canadiens, Carey Price, the Hart Trophy winner. I mean, you can't go wrong with a brick wall, and that's exactly what Carey Price is. So Canadiens 3.
Certainly, a lot of teams in contention to compete for this division and how it'll shake out. Jake, I'm kind of with you there. I'm excited to see what the Florida Panthers can do, the mix of young with the veterans, a team that's been kind of down in the basement for a little while, see if they're able to climb their way and make their way into the playoffs here. But we'll look at the second team, or the second division rather, in the Eastern Conference. Each conference has two divisions for fans that are newer to hockey. We looked at the Atlantic Division. The other division in the Eastern Conference is the Metropolitan, and that's the home to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Philadelphia Flyers, and a lot of other teams that have really been good the past couple of years. But we'll focus on the Penguins a little bit here because it was an interesting offseason for Pittsburgh after getting bounced by New York for the second consecutive year. They've lost some defense. Paul Martin and Christian Ehrhoff both gone for Pittsburgh, but they brought in some offense in Phil Kessel and Sergei Plotnikov. So looking at this Pittsburgh team, would you consider them to be in a better position heading into this season than they were last year?
I don't know. I would say yes, just because a big thing that I noticed last year that seemed to be a recurring issue with Pittsburgh Penguins was secondary goal scoring. They needed guys to light it up other than Crosby and Malkin. They got some secondary scoring at certain points throughout the year. Patrick Hornquist, obviously, Sutter. They definitely had the secondary scoring at times, but when they really needed it, when it came down towards the end of the season and into the postseason, they didn't get it. I think bringing in Phil Kessel is a tremendous move for them. He's a tremendous talent, and he can light it up offensively, and I think that's really key for them. So I think, in a sense, they fixed that aspect. Obviously, they have Crosby back, Malkin back, Hornquist. But I think they lost a lot on the blue line. Obviously, Ehrhoff and Martin, like you mentioned, they've got a really young defense core. And that being said, they do have a lot of talent on that defense core. But I don't know if they're going to be able to kind of man the blue line for the duration of the season. So I think that's just going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see on. But I don't know right now if they're better or worse. I think it's something we're just going to have to wait and see.
I'd say without a doubt the Penguins are in better shape than they were. And I'll even say I think that this Penguins team is the best positioned at the start of a season that a Penguins team has been since their Stanley Cup years of 2008 and 2009. I think bringing in Phil Kessel was a wonderful move. Jim Rutherford knew that Kessel was the center of attention in Toronto, and his personality really doesn't lend itself, especially in a market like that with the media presence that comes with Canada's largest city is Toronto. I think their forwards are much, much, much more improved with the additions of, like you mentioned, Plotnikov, but also Nick Bonino, Eric Fehr. Bo Bennett looks like he can kind of break out, which he hasn't done in his career yet. I just feel like they have some question marks on defense, obviously, but I see them going after a veteran defenseman that really helps them at the deadline. And I see the Penguins as being a very, very strong contender this year.
I'm going to have to disagree. Feel free to counter. But I think that they're in a worse position than they were last year, and I'm actually questioning Rutherford on his decisions. The reason being is it's like a person that goes into the grocery store looking for eggs.
All right.
Looking for eggs, and he comes back, gets bread. Oh, I need that, I need this, I need the other thing. Comes out of the store and totally forgot exactly what he came in there to get, which was eggs. He needed defense, but you know what? He didn't get any. Instead, he picked out some shining, glittery thing that he saw in the checkout aisle for 99 cents, picked it out, and there he got Phil Kessel on his team. I don't agree with the move at all. I think that we don't need any more offense than we do. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin are enough. They're the best players in the world. I honestly don't think more offense is going to help the Pittsburgh Penguins. What we need is a solid defense, a solid core. That is what we don't have.
And I'm going to choose to counter that by saying that last year in the playoffs, what was it that the Penguins didn't have? It was offense. They only scored one goal in each of their 4 losses to the Rangers, and that was because Crosby and Malkin did not have any wingers to play with. They may be the best players in the world, but if you put them out there with 2 scrubs on either side, they're not going to produce. And this year you have Kessel, you have Hornquist back, you have some more players that can pick up the slack in the bottom 6, which helps if you can chip in an occasional goal. Because last year in the playoffs, the Penguins were playing Craig Adams, 1 goal all year. Playing guys like, I can't even remember, Steve Downey, Nick Spaulding, guys who don't score goals, guys who don't help. And now that they have that in the bottom six, they can chip in offensively, take some of the pressure off Crosby and Malkin, and when Crosby and Malkin do have to produce, they have those wingers who are elite level talents. Because Hornquist and Kessel are elite players.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Absolutely. One thing's for sure, no egg sandwiches for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year, but that's okay because they do bring back Olli Mata, who missed almost all of last season. So a lot of defensive issues. Olli Mata had a really good season in his first year in the NHL. Missed most of last year. He's back and healthy. We'll see if he's able to stabilize this defense core a little bit. But we'll continue the Metropolitan Division talk here and look at some of the players that you are looking to keep your eye on this season in the Metropolitan.
It might be a little bit cliche, being that he's possibly, arguably, one of the best players in the NHL. Alexander Ovechkin for the Washington Capitals. He had a tremendous year last year. You could argue that it was one of the best that he's had in his career, and he's obviously had a tremendous career. Bringing Barry Trotz in from Nashville last year was a really, really, I would say, rejuvenation for this Washington Capitals club. I think for the first time in Alexander Ovechkin's career, he got to play offense and defense, which nobody else has been able to manage that, I guess, if you will. So I think Ovi, obviously, he lit it up offensively, as he usually does. But I think he had an overall better game last year. I think he continues that this year. I think he continues to light it up offensively, especially on the power play. Because if there's one thing that's one of the toughest things to stop in hockey, it's an Alex Ovechkin one-timer from the left circle. And I think he continues to light it up this year for the Caps. I think they're a contender. I think they're a better team than they were last year, second year in Barry Trotz's system.
I'm going to have to go with Brandon Saad of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Pittsburgh boy, obviously. Came over from Chicago where he won 2 Stanley Cups. He came over here with a lot of expectations to Columbus, and they immediately gave him the huge contract. And in my opinion, Saad is the premier young power forward in the NHL. And Columbus is really looking to take that next step. We saw them a few years ago play Pittsburgh, and play Pittsburgh very tough.
Certainly.
The Penguins were a superior team at that time. But this year, the margin is a lot lower, if not completely closed. Because you have Johansson, you have Dubinsky, you have some talent up there. And Saad was brought in to be that goal scorer. Saad was brought in to put up 30, 35 goals. And it'll be interesting to me if he can do it. Because if he can, the Blue Jackets might be a very, very tough team to beat this year.
I'm going to say Henrik Lundqvist for the New York Rangers, mainly because the man can stop anything that comes at him. He is a force to be reckoned with. He is one of, besides obviously the Rangers' offense, he is one of the reasons why the Rangers got so far into the playoffs as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, I kind of want to go back to a point that you made with Alex Ovechkin. When Barry Trotz came in, I was a little skeptical from an outsider. It's like, okay, here's a guy who really preaches defense. Mm-hmm. You're coming to take Alexander Ovechkin, who didn't play a lick of defense.
He didn't. I mean, talk about somebody who just never even stepped foot in the defensive zone.
He kind of cherry-picked his way, which it worked for him. Mm-hmm. He put up the numbers, but he had that two-way game going, and I think it really benefited him. He just got involved and kind of got in a feel of the game, and I think a big year certainly in store for him. So we'll close out our Eastern Conference preview here by looking at how you think the Metropolitan Division shakes out this season.
Well, first of all, I'm going to give all 3 this time. I forgot to do that for the last one. To start, like I just mentioned, the Washington Capitals. I think this is their year to win the Metropolitan Division. I think a second year in Barry Trotz's system is going to do them a lot of good, especially when you've got Alexander Ovechkin leading the way. I really like what they did on defense last year, and obviously defense is a huge, crucial part to the success of this hockey club. Matty Niskanen, Brooks Orpik, John Carlson, these are some of the guys. I know they did lose Mike Green, but I think they find a way to keep it together defensively at the blue line. They've got a lot of good young talent there. I really like the Caps a lot. I think they win the division. Second, I'm going to say the New York Rangers. I know they lost Marty St. Louis to retirement. They made some trades in the offseason. I really do like their defense core, though. They brought over Keith Yandel last year at the deadline. They made a lot of moves last year at the deadline that were interesting. It seemed that they really, really were in search of a Stanley Cup. And obviously they didn't get it. They fell a little bit short. But now they do have some of these guys returning this year, so I think it's going to be. I think they're going to work hard to get back to where they were, and hopefully get another shot at the Cup. Hopefully for Ranger fans, get another shot at the Cup. And then in third, I like the New York Islanders. I thought I don't want to say underachieved last year, but I think expectations were higher for them, being that they are so young and I guess talented. They've got a lot of speed. They've got guys who can score goals. John Tavares is a rising star in the National Hockey League. I would say he is a star right now. I like this Islanders team. I think they could finish it third. Obviously, I have them third, but this is going to be a tight division. I got Pittsburgh possibly finishing third, and I could have Columbus finishing third. I think this is a real toss-up. There's a lot of good teams in the Metropolitan this year, and I think it's going to be a dogfight at the end of the year.
I'm going to say the Rangers win the division this year. I feel like they have the most complete team top to bottom. Like you said, Henrik Lundqvist is one of the best goalies in the NHL, if not the best goalies in the NHL. I feel like their defense corps is the best in the NHL. When you have a guy like Keith Yandel with all of his talent playing on the bottom pairing, it speaks volumes as to the depth you have on defense. I do see them having a few problems producing offense. I think their centers are a little bit suspect compared to some of the other teams with Brassard and Stepan. I feel like those two players they're don't get me wrong, they're excellent players, but they're not really elite centers, so that's where I see them faltering if they do falter. In second place, I have the Penguins. I just think Crosby and Malkin return to form this year with the addition of Kessel and Hornquist. I think their defense overachieves because they do have some pieces that have some pedigree, and with them the key is always staying injury-free. Last year I think were in the top 5 in the NHL in man games lost, and the year before they blew everybody else out in that category. So if they can stay healthy, I feel like they have a chance to challenge the Rangers. And third, I have the Capitals. I think Justin Williams coming in from LA, I think he gives them a lot of a boost in the playoff experience category. Another veteran like Orpik and Niskanen, like you mentioned. And I think that once Backstrom comes back from his hip surgery, I think him and Ovechkin really form a deadly tandem on that top line.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think the Rangers go number 1. I think you said that.
I did.
Reason being is definitely their defense, Henrik Lundqvist in net. As long as they can keep a good offense like they did last year, they had no problem lighting the lamp. So as long as they can do that, then I think they can definitely go number 1. Then next I have the Capitals. Capitals are a solid team with Alex Ovechkin. Like you said before, he was your player to watch. I think they'll be number 2, and then I have the Flyers for number 3, unfortunately.
Surprising.
I know it's surprising. I know it is surprising. I think they're a solid team this year. I think they will go number 3, unfortunately.
Yeah. So you see, we mentioned a lot of teams, and I did want to mention with New York, it'll be interesting to see what they are able to do in Brooklyn. Say it again, Brooklyn. They're in Brooklyn now. So we'll step out, come back, talk about the Western Conference here in the National Hockey League season preview. We'll be right back on The Big Hit.
It's hard to explain. It just became home. There are hundreds of majors and programs, bachelor's degrees to PhDs, small classes and faculty that really get to know you. Amazing internships and everywhere programs that help to find a job that is right for you. It's what IUP is about, a commitment to your success. See it for yourself. Visit us, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Find your success.
Hi, and welcome back into The Big Hit right here on IUP-TV. It's our NHL season preview, and we are here to preview the Western Conference. Now we preview the East before the break. We're here with Sean Fritz, Jake Enders, Andrew Friendy Friend. How y'all doing tonight? We'll talk about the Western Conference now and begin in the Central Division. One team obviously comes to mind when talking about the Central Division, the Chicago Blackhawks. That's who we'll talk about. They had some offseason departures of Pat Sharp and Brandon Saad, both gone. Little off-season turmoil for Patrick Kane. It didn't make a lot of headlines because the National Hockey League doesn't make a lot of headlines, but Pat Kane had himself a little off-season turmoil as well. So looking at Chicago, a lot of things going on. Are they still equipped to pick off right where they left off?
I don't think so. I don't think they are. I think, obviously, they've got a lot of talent remaining on this team. In Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves. and obviously on their blue line with Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook. But I'm not sure that they can really continue how they've been. They've got like you mentioned, Josh, they've got a lot of departures, and those are only some of them. Patrick Sharp, Brandon Saad, Johnny Oduya on their blue line. They're not a completely different team. They have added some good veterans, but I think they've got a lot of young guys in their lineup too. I don't know if they can really continue right away. Anyways, maybe the chemistry builds at some point throughout the year, and they look like the same Chicago Blackhawks that we're accustomed to seeing. I still think that there's a good chance that they can have a good year and that they can get into the playoffs. But I don't know if we're going to see them really dominate, at least not to start the season.
I would agree with that. I don't feel like the Blackhawks have the same team they had last year. Obviously, all the names you mentioned. I think bringing in Trevor Daley on the blue line really helps them. They got him in the Patrick Sharp trade. But I keep having to go back to the Blackhawks' mystique. They have all that experience, especially with their core guys, in winning championships, 3 Stanley Cups in the last 6 years. So for now, I'm going to say on paper they don't have what it takes, but I feel like they have a chance to recapture that same magic, even if they are missing some of their key pieces.
I think the same as well. Patrick Kane is still lighting up the lamp out there. He's leading the league in points right now. I mean, I know it doesn't mean anything because it's only 2 games, but still, I think that that down the stretch they'll definitely be a contending team. I won't take that away from them at any respect.
Yeah, certainly. It's hard to pick against the Blackhawks until they give you a reason not to, because they've really been the modern-day dynasty. Like you said, Jake, 3 Stanley Cups in 6 seasons, and they've got a bunch of talent back, and Taves and Kane. That's that 1-2 duo that, as long as they are in the fold in Chicago, you have to think they have a chance at the very least. So we'll look here. I may have taken some words out of people's mouths here, because we're going to look at players to watch in the Central Division here. Who do you guys have your eye on this season?
I have Vladimir Tarasenko from the St. Louis Blues. I think the Blues, I don't want to say this is their year, but I think if there is a year for them to capitalize and take advantage of Chicago's, I guess, miscues, you could say, with how things are going in Chicago, as we just talked about, I think this would be that year for the St. Louis Blues. I think they've got they've got a lot of talent on the team, obviously. They lost a key piece in TJ Oshie in the offseason, but I think Vladimir Tarasenko is a tremendous talent. He had a breakout season last year. I think he continues to do so. I think he lights the lamp up a lot for the Blues, and I think he's a key piece for them in 5-on-5 and on the power play. So I think Tarasenko has another breakout season for the Blues.
I have Jonathan Taves of the Chicago Blackhawks. Looking at the Blackhawks this year right now, I think their main problem is going to be scoring goals, because they lost Saad, they lost Sharp, and Marian Hossa is a year older. And Brian Bickle, another player, we're not really sure about his contract right now, where he's even going to play. So Taves, it's his opportunity to kind of step it up offensively. We know he's one of the best two-way centers in the NHL, but he's never really broken into the elite category as far as offensive centers, a place occupied by guys like Tavares and Getzlaf and Crosby, guys like that. So he's going to have a lot more on his shoulders in the offensive zone this year, because the Blackhawks are missing their goal scorers.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Patrick Kane, same team. I actually misspoke. He's actually second in points. He's first in goals. That's my mistake. However, he is definitely a player to watch. He has a hat trick in one of his games. Definitely lighting up the lamp. I think that he's a key player for the Chicago Blackhawks. He is a key player for the Chicago Blackhawks. So my player to watch is definitely Patrick Kane.
Yeah, and want to mention TJ Oshie went to the Washington Capitals, who I think we all love this year, going back to the East. So that is a big departure for St. Louis, and it can really impact how things shake out here in the Central Division this season. So we'll close out this half of the Western Conference preview by asking who finishes first, second, and third in the Central this season.
Like I just mentioned, I really like St. Louis this year. I think they take full advantage of what's going on in Chicago right now, and I think they've got a lot of talent. Like I said, I think with Tarasenko leading the way, I think this is going to be a good year for St. Louis. I like their defense core a lot. I think this is another tough division, obviously, to pick, because there are so many talented teams, as we saw last year, with the 2 wildcard teams being for the Central Division. But I like St. Louis 1. I like Nashville 2. I think Nashville's for real, to be honest with you. I think last year they played really, really well in Peter Laviolette's system. I think they've got some good young talent on that team too, and obviously some key veterans and guys like Shea Weber, who's their captain, who mans the blue line for them. I think Nashville finishes 2, and then 3rd, I'm going to say Chicago, because just what you guys were just talking about. Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane are going to give you a chance to win every night. They're tremendous talents. They really mesh well together. I think even though they did lose a lot of pieces, I think that they eventually kind of build that chemistry back up. And I think with them, it's all about getting hot at the right time, like they've done so many times before now. And I think that there's a chance that they can do it again this year. I think they get in the playoffs regardless, whether they're the 3 or the 4 or maybe even the 5 for that division.
I agonized over this more than any other division because in my mind this is the strongest division in hockey because in no other division could all 7 teams potentially make the playoffs. I think all 7 teams in this division are very, very tough. But I went with a surprise. I said the Winnipeg Jets break through this year and win this division. Team kind of out of nowhere. I think that they have what it takes on offense and on defense. I think Scheifele, the big center, I think he's their main cog. Andrew Ladd, Blake Wheeler, they have a lot of good players. We don't know about them really in net, Andre Pavlik, but I feel like they will break through because we saw last year they're the hardest working team in the NHL. And I feel like this is their year to capitalize on that with the Blackhawks going down a little bit, still being strong, but going down a little bit. The Blues, I think the Blues are going to take a step back this year. In second place, I have the Blackhawks. I think that they just, like you said, Toews and Kane give them a chance to win every night, and you can't beat that. And then third, I had the Minnesota Wild. I think it's time for Zach Parise and Ryan Suter to live up to those enormous contracts and really, deliver it. And the interesting thing to me about the Wild is that they kind of built their team modeled after the way the Blackhawks play, and this is the first time that they have a chance to overtake the Blackhawks because I think they have the talent to do that, where in past years they just weren't quite good enough to beat the Blackhawks, but they play that same style.
Yeah. I have the Blackhawks actually going number 1. I think they don't miss a beat. Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, they're similar to the Pittsburgh Penguins' Crosby and Malkin. They're a solid team. I think they go number 1. Then I have the Blues. Unfortunately, TJ Oshie plays for now the Capitals, but I still think that they are a solid team all around. And then I have the Wild going third.
Yeah, certainly. I'm glad you mentioned Winnipeg, Jake, because they had their white-hot playoff run extinguished a little bit by Anaheim last year. We'll see if they're able to take another step. But we'll close out here the Pacific Division. We're running a little low on time, so we'll speed it up a bit. The LA Kings, 2 Stanley Cups in 3 years for them, but then they missed the playoffs last season. What do they have to do to get back to the glory days of the LA Kings?
Well, obviously they didn't get off to a good start, getting blown out the other night by San Jose on the first game of the season opener. Last year they struggled on the road a lot. They played well at home, but they really struggled on the road. Half your games come on the road. It's going to be, and you struggle there, it's going to be pretty tough to get on hot streaks. I think they really got to play better on the road. I think that there are a lot of good key pieces on this team. Guys like Dustin Brown, Ajay Kopitar. They've got a really, really solid defense core, I would say, with guys like they added Christian Ehrhoff. Drew Doughty, obviously, is a tremendous, tremendous defenseman. So they've got the pieces. Obviously, they got Jonathan Quick. I think the pieces are there to bounce back and kind of restart this thing, but I think they've got to play better on the road and just more consistent in general.
To me, the Kings, most of their problems are off the ice. We saw that they had a lot of conflicts with their head coach, Darryl Sutter, at one point even locking him out of the dressing room after a game. I think they lost Mike Richards, which was a contentious affair between him and management. Jarrett Stoll had the cocaine possession charges. I feel like if they can put that behind them and kind of have a fresh slate, clean slate, they have the talent, they have the team with Quick, Kopitar, all those guys that they can challenge for a playoff berth this year.
Definitely. I think what needs to be done by the LA Kings is their captain. It all starts from the team leader, Dustin Brown. He has to step it up. If he can step it up, get things moving, I think that the LA Kings can be a contending team.
Absolutely. The LA Kings, a team that could get back into it at any point with the talent they have. We'll look here. Who are some players you have to watch in this division?
For me, I got Joe Pavelski from the San Jose Sharks. I'm going to touch on them in a minute. But I think Joe Pavelski is a great talent. I think he's still relatively young. Obviously, he's got some aging players around him and guys like Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau. I think Pavelski's the real deal. I think he lights it up this year offensively. I think he's assumed a leadership role in their dressing room. I really like Joe Pavelski this year.
I have Mike Smith, the goaltender for the Arizona Coyotes, used to be Phoenix Coyotes.
Yeah.
That still confuses me. I think if he can put last year behind him and kind of get back to the way he used to play, back to form, I think he can carry them because the Coyotes are revamped this year. They have a lot of new faces, Antoine Vermette, Steve Downey, guys like that, who I think that they can challenge in probably the weakest division in the NHL to me right now, at least.
I have Jonathan Quick for the LA Kings. He's a solid goaltender. There's no contending that. I think that he continues, and he is a crucial part for the LA Kings to make a playoff run.
Certainly. I'm looking at Arizona like you, Jake. We're kind of on the same page here. Not your father's original six team. A lot of young guys, and they have potential. These young teams, you never know what they can do. They could tank. They could make it into the playoffs. And I'll ask the question now. Who finishes first, second, and third here in the Pacific Division to close out our Western Conference preview?
For me, I got to go with the Anaheim Ducks. I liked them a lot last year going into the playoffs. They fell just a little bit short in the Western Conference Final. But I think that if there was any way for them to get better in the offseason, they certainly did it. They brought in a lot of guys who are going to be key pieces for them. Mike Santorelli, a center. They acquired him from Nashville. Kevin Bieksa, he's going to bolster that blue line for him. I like this Ducks team. They got guys like Chris Stewart. They just added so many pieces offensively. Defensively, I kind of question them a little bit, but I really like Anaheim. I think they've got certainly the ability to score goals. Hopefully they put their goaltending issues aside by getting rid of John Gibson. Frederick Anderson seems to be the guy right now. So I think the Anaheim Ducks go 1. 2, I like the San Jose Sharks. I think they're a rejuvenated team. A new head coach in Peter DeBoer. And we've seen him have success in New Jersey in 2012, taking them to a Stanley Cup where they were defeated by the LA Kings. But I think Joe Pavelski is has assumed a new role as a leader. He's a captain this year. I like San Jose 2. And 3, I'm going to say the Calgary Flames. I actually really liked the Flames last year. They got a lot of young guys. So I think the Flames finished third.
I agree with you. I have the Ducks as number 1 team, mainly by default. Like I said, it's kind of a weak division. I think their main question mark is in net with Anderson. I think John Gibson is the goalie of the future. After him, I have the Flames. I think they have a fine defensive core led by Giordano, who should be healthy. And the number 3 team, the aforementioned Coyotes, I think they're going to come out of nowhere and surprise some people, come out of the desert.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Sean. Ducks and Sharks 1 and 2, so there's not much to say about that. But then I have number 3 going the Kings. I think they step it up. Like I said, Dustin Brown, I think he gets it together, and then obviously Jonathan Quick with the shutout net. So.
Yeah, a lot of animals, a lot of royalty here in this division. We'll see who comes out on top. But now's a chance for you to look smarter than all your friends here. I want to thank Mikey Mike for giving us that chance. Just give me a player here. Who wins the Hart Trophy? Just give me a name.
Ovi.
Sidney Crosby.
Sidney Crosby.
Okay, and to close out our NHL preview here, we'll look at who makes the Stanley Cup and who wins it. 2 teams and a winner. Here we go.
I like Tampa Bay from the East. I like Anaheim from the West, and I like Anaheim overall.
I like Pittsburgh from the East. I like Anaheim from the West, and I like Pittsburgh to win the Stanley Cup this year.
Rangers from the East, Sharks from the West, Rangers to win it all.
There you have it, our NHL season preview. Hockey season is here. We'll be crashing the net all season long. We want to thank Sean Fritz, Jake Enders, Andrew Friend in the building. We're going to take a break, come back with some NFL talk when we return right here on The Big Hit.
Want to learn more about IUP-TV? We have the solution. IUP-TV is now online on Facebook. You can find us by simply searching Facebook for IUP-TV. Once you click like, you can check out your favorite shows on our IUP-TV showcase, view our broadcast schedule, get updates on everything about your favorite station, and tell us how much you love your favorite shows. IUP-TV, not like other stations.
And welcome back into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. We have made the transition. We're on this side of the studio now, and we're going to talk some football to close out the show in the NFL here with our Red Zone recap. Very happy to welcome Ari Ohan and my main man making his Big Hit debut. First time on set for Evan McHugh. Welcome, Evan. Going to be a good discussion here of NFL. We're going to start with the game that closed out week number 5, Monday Night Football, the San Diego Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers from Qualcomm Stadium. It was a very competitive game for both teams, very down to the wire, so to speak. But Pittsburgh, without Ben Roethlisberger for the foreseeable future, he had that injury. I want to just kind of get a look at the Steelers here and ask, can they survive without Ben Roethlisberger for the next couple of weeks? Because Mike Vick struggled a bit against a down San Diego defense.
Well, I have to say absolutely that the Steelers can survive. Michael Vick should be 2-0 if it wasn't for Josh Scobie's 2 missed field goals a couple weeks ago against the Ravens. And he did lead that game-winning drive, which ultimately led to Le'Veon Bell scoring the winning touchdown. But Michael Vick did his job when it counted. But overall, he did struggle, but I'd say he's a great game manager, and the Steelers' defense will carry them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the key word there is survive. I think the Steelers are going to have to try to survive as long as Ben is out. I think if the Steelers can go even 500 would be a win in the eyes of Coach Tomlin. I thought he looked pretty good against the Chargers. That obviously the last drive he had that big run that set them up, and then he had a nice pass right on the 1 yard line there, and then Le'Veon punched it in. Yeah. I thought it was a great last drive and big time for the Steelers. Big win. Yeah,
and I think the Steelers found their formula. They got to keep ringing the bell here, go to Le'Veon Bell and use D'Angelo Williams, 2 very good running backs. You want to keep Antonio Brown and all the other receivers happy, but you got to start with running the football, at least until Ben Roethlisberger gets back. Maybe give Michael Vick a little bit more time to practice, some more chemistry with his receivers. We'll see how the Steelers are able to go from here. But they've got a team that they're trying to chase down who's gotten off to a red-hot start. Another AFC North team, the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 5-0, and they really played a good game against the Seattle Seahawks, overcoming the Seahawks in overtime, 27-24. Looking at the Bengals, always a good regular season. The problem for Andy Dalton and the Bengals seem to be the playoffs. But is this the year they're a legitimate contender?
I would have to say yes, they are definitely contenders. I mean, they were really close in their game with the Colts last year in the playoffs, but Andy Dalton was without Jermaine Gresham and another offensive weapon, so that really killed their vibe. But this year, the Cincinnati Bengals are really on fire right now. Andy Dalton is playing the best football of his career, and A.J. Green is healthy, and Tyler Eifert's healthy. And their defense is amazing. Carlos Dunlap leads the league in sacks with 5 right now. So I definitely could see the Bengals really taking off this year.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. The Bengals looked really good. Anytime you score 17 unanswered against the Seahawks defense like that, I mean, wow. I mean, Dalton is putting up Pro Bowl numbers this year. A.J. Green, Eifert is doing his best impression of Gronkowski. The defense looks good. Pac-Man Jones, Drake Kirkpatrick. Definitely, I think they could be up there in the AFC.
Yeah, this is a team that Cincinnati's wanted for a while. They've never been able to have their full complement available to them, especially on offense, especially with Tyler Eifert. He's a big piece. Everybody's back. Jeremy Hill, Gio Bernard, that's a dynamic 1-2 punch at the running back position. A lot of good receivers, dynamic tight end in Eifert as well. Cincinnati seems to be well on their way, and they obviously started off very well. But we'll move into the NFC here. Look at performance from DeMarco Murray, 130 total yards in Philadelphia's 39-17 win over New Orleans. So Philadelphia, it's been up and down this year. A lot has been made of the play calling. A lot has been made of the head coach, Chip Kelly. But is this a sign, finally, of good things to come for the Eagles?
I think it's too early to tell, honestly. I mean, the Saints don't even have that great of a defense to begin with, and DeMarco Murray really struggled his first 3 games, only totaling 11 yards. But I can honestly just see this being his best game of the season. I mean, it's too early to tell what the future holds for the rest of the season with DeMarco Murray.
I like to think that this is a good sign for the Eagles. A lot of turmoil going on with Chip Kelly. I mean, Philadelphia fans can be rough at times. They're quick to jump to conclusions. I think the Eagles, I think that was a good step forward. DeMarco obviously getting his touches. Bradford looked all right. He needs to, if Bradford can limit his interceptions and just do what he came to do and be accurate and make plays, in that system, I believe that the Eagles can make a run and get hot at the right time.
Certainly, and it's a run-first offense for Philadelphia, too. So DeMarco Murray needs to have more 130 total yard kind of performances. He needs to be a focal point of the Philadelphia Eagles offense, and they're biding time until Kirko Alonso comes back for them, certainly. But we'll look at the NFC East now. Everybody separated by one game, and the New York Giants kind of put themselves in a position with a comeback victory over the San Francisco 49ers. Eli Manning hooking up with Larry Donnell. It was incredible. Seemed like pretty much all the receivers were out. Shane Vereen was really one of the only viable options for New York, but they found a way to beat San Francisco here. Big win for New York. Would you consider them to be the favorite to win the NFC East? They're in first place right now.
Right now, the NFC East is anyone's division right now. I mean, the Redskins are the worst team right now, but they haven't been blown out yet. And if Kirk Cousins limits his interceptions and turnovers, they could easily contend for the NFC East. And right now, the Cowboys made a change at quarterback, so we have to see what Castle's made out of right now. I mean, he could be that 2008 Castle who filled in for Brady and led them to second place in the division. So right now it's anyone's game or anyone's division right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on the G-men yet. I think the Cowboys are going to have a tough time without Des Bryant. Right now, their best option is probably Jason Witten and running the ball. The Redskins, are the Redskins. They look better than they did last year, but it's hard to pick. It's going to be hard to pick them to win the NFC East. I'm going to have to stick with the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to get hot. I think they're going to figure it out, and I think they win the NFC East.
Yeah, I think what we're all trying to say is the division is right there for the taking. So there's a team that really needs to step up and just go out and get it, because everybody's kind of floundering right now. Somebody needs to find themselves and step up and take this NFC East. It will probably come down to the last game of the season. It always seems to. But we'll close out our NFL talk talking about some of the elite here in the NFL and some of the elite franchises in the National Football League. The Green Bay Packers, the New England Patriots. New England had their bye last week, but did beat Dallas in Jerry World. 2 weeks ago, New England had their bye. Looking at both of these teams, both undefeated, who do you think has a better shot at finishing the year, a regular season, undefeated here to close things out?
That's a really tough question. I mean, the Patriots playing the tougher division, but the Packers' outside division foes is a lot tougher than the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots lucked out with playing the weak AFC South this year, and the Packers have to face the top-rated defense Cardinals. So it's really anyone's it's really anyone's game for this one. Mm-hmm. I'm really not sure who was better, more likely to go undefeated.
This is a coin flip for me. I think to go undefeated in a regular season, a lot of things have to go right for you, and obviously the injury of Jordy Nelson, that's not going to help long term. Even though Aaron Rodgers is being Aaron Rodgers so far this year, being an MVP candidate. But Tom Brady's doing the same thing on the other side. I believe he has a better QBR right now through 5 games than he did in 2007 when he had Randy Moss and they went undefeated. The Patriots have the Jets coming up twice this year. They're in the same division. That's never an easy game for them. They play the Broncos in Denver, which isn't going to be easy for any offense. The Packers have Denver in Denver, and the Panthers at Carolina, which are 2 tough defenses with Kuechly coming back. If I had to choose, I'm going to have to go with the Patriots because I don't like betting against Tom Brady in anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go Patriots.
Absolutely. I think a good answer to this question also would be nobody. Nobody really has a chance here. Looking at Aaron Rodgers, he did throw an interception at home finally. Incredible. We actually threw 2 against St. Louis. I had to kind of do a double take when I saw it. I'm like, the one was tipped, still ruled an interception. And Tom Brady, boy, does he do a great job making the pieces around him better. He doesn't have a ton, but he still finds a way to get everybody involved, make everybody happy. Both teams are rolling right now, but NFL season in full swing. We loved every minute of it here. It was a good NFL discussion here with Ari Ohan, Evan McHugh. We'll step out, talk a little bit more football, this time on campus, as we talk about the Crimson Hawks when we return right here on The Big Hit.
Students in communications media at Indiana University of Pennsylvania can focus on a variety of areas, including media promotions. Our promotions students learn their skills by working in a hands-on environment, gaining real-world experience. They learn how to use media to promote, produce, and manage events, and how media organizations operate. They create promotional campaigns and help clients pitch their services, products, and events. With excellent classes led by experienced teachers, the Communications Media Department at IUP is perfect for students interested in media promotions.
Welcome back, everyone, to IUP's favorite TV show, The Big Hit. We're going to change things up right now, and we're going to let Josh Hill do some analyzing today with his favorite buddy, Malusi Kitchen. So, gentlemen, IUP improved to 4-1 overall and 3-0 in the PSAC West play after beating Seton Hill 47-10. Is it safe to say that they're a contender to win the conference title following 4 straight wins of 21 or more?
I would certainly say so. I think it was an impressive victory over Seton Hill. I would definitely say they're a contender, but mathematically, I think just about everybody's still a contender in the PSAC West. They say any given day in the PSAC, it almost becomes like a cliche, but looking at some of these other games, the way it's worked out, teams who are kind of underdogs, so to speak, have won games, and I think moving forward, everybody has a great chance. What do you think, Malusi?
Yeah, I think I agree with Josh. I think everybody's still a contender at this moment. We've only done it about halfway through the season, and they still have their toughest games ahead of them with Clarion, Cal, and Slippery Rock, who are also on the top of the PSAC West. So I think they're on a good roll right now, especially with the way their defense has been playing. I think the offense has actually come alive in this after their first game, and I think it's still too early to tell, but I'd say for right now they're looking really, really good.
Yeah, speaking of offense coming alive, redshirt freshman Lenny Williams ran for a QB record 205 yards Saturday against Seton Hill. Do you think he keeps it up, or do you think his numbers are going to fall back?
Lenny Williams, of course, a redshirt freshman transferring in from Temple, had a lot of ability, and he's finally starting to use that ability here, named the starter over Chase Hazlitt. And I look at Lenny Williams, tremendous burst, tremendous vision in the open field. He's 7th in NCAA Division II football in rushing yards amongst quarterbacks. He's in the top 10 of the PSAC in average yards per game. Lenny Williams, a guy who's starting to understand it. He's starting to get it coming in, same as a freshman. He is a guy who has gone through camp now and is finally starting to get some games under his belt, get some chemistry, work with this new offensive system. So to me, Lenny Williams is really a bright spot for this IUP team and will be for years to come.
Yeah, I think the versatility that he brings to the quarterback position is something that IUP was sorely missing because they would just go with the prototypical drop back quarterback. But as we can see, especially with Lenny Williams, he's able to read the offense. He commands the offense. He's able to read the defense pretty well, whether he needs to run or throw the ball. And I think the fact that what makes him so good is the fact that he can decide which one is needed at that time, whether he needs to run the ball or he needs to throw it. Because most quarterbacks we see like that, they usually run first and then pass second. But he actually does a really good job of doing both, and I think that's a big key to the offensive success right now.
Yeah, speaking of quarterback play, Seton Hill's passing offense was ranked number 5 in the nation coming into Saturday, but the Crimson Hawks did not allow any touchdowns. Was this a good sign for IUP's defense or a bad day for Seton Hill's defense?
I would say the IUP defense certainly had a lot to do with it, and they really did a good job as far as game planning. Defensive coordinator Paul Tortorella threw a ton of different looks at Seton Hill. They were going with sometimes 7 defensive backs. They were going with Takai Turner as a linebacker, 2 down linemen, so many different looks just to confuse the Seton Hill offense. And they made their plays. They had their yards, but IUP kept them off the board. They scored a field goal late, in garbage time. So really, I think it was the IUP defense starting to come together. They had a lot of depth, although they were still shorthanded a little bit. So a lot of guys had to play well for IUP to have this kind of day. They did, and I think the game plan really put them in a good position to have success against Seton Hill, who was phenomenal coming in, like you said.
Yeah, I just think being fundamentally sound in their defensive scheme really helped them a lot. I mean, we saw, it's been 4 games since their first game, but they've really come a long way. I think they've grown each week in understanding the defensive system and just what their jobs and their role is. And communication, I think, has been their biggest key because they're actually starting to. The defense has done a lot more, especially the secondary, which we actually had concerns about in the opening but at the start of the season. But I think that they pulled it together. The defensive secondary is actually really good. They're coming alive right now. But I think just IUP's defense is getting better week to week, and I think you'll be able to see that in these next few games.
Yeah, speaking of next few games, on Saturday, IUP faces Cal U at home at 6 o'clock, ninth game at Miller Stadium. But besides that, they have 3 more games against Slippery Rock, Clarion, which are the top of the crop in the PSAC. How do you guys think IUP will do the rest of the season?
Yeah, looking at IUP's schedule the rest of the year, last year, this is kind of when things fell apart. They're running into the cream of the crop here in the PSAC. After this Cal game, 3 of 4 games are on the road for IUP. They only have 1 more home game left. So I'm looking at this defense and kind of how their approach to Seton Hill, stopping the running game, and offense running the football as well. And that's kind of been their MO this year, to stop the running game, to run the football. They haven't had to throw the ball much. They've got some really good teams coming up, and they just have to take it 1 week at a time for this IUP team. Like you said, the defense is playing well. There's a lot of individuals playing well and a lot of guys playing well. Just both units, offense, defense, everybody's playing well right now, but tough PSAC West schedule coming up, and it's going to be a tough road here to close out the season. It certainly was last year.
Yeah, and I think you hit the main point. They have to take it game by game. So you worry about Cal this weekend because I think that's where they lost focus last year. Looking ahead to the actually being in the playoffs, but that doesn't work. It doesn't work like that when you take your eye off the moment. It usually ends badly, but the way this IUP team is playing right now, they have a good chance to beat all 3 of these teams. If they play their game, if the defense, if the offense keeps playing like they're playing, I think they'll have no problem. I don't think they'll be blowing out these teams by 21 points just because of how good Clarion, Cal, and Slippery Rock are at this moment. But it's definitely going to be a good challenge for IUP, mentally to step up and rise to the occasion to beat these teams.
Yeah, and one more thing, they're working the zone read, and it's been really a big help for them because Chris Temple has set records this year in touchdowns, but whenever they've shut the running backs down, Lenny's been able to pull the ball. He has tremendous explosiveness. He has a tremendous ability to make plays in the open field, make guys miss. He's just nifty. He's a master of improvisation. So this IUP rushing attack is dynamic, and they're going to need that, especially as the weather turns colder.
Yeah. So Saturday, how do you guys think IUP will do?
Well, we'll have the game on IUP-TV, Crimson Hawk Sports Network. You visit IUP Athletics to watch that. So calling the game, I can't really pick it, but Cal's defense gives up a lot. IUP's running the football very well. They're going to have to run the football.
Yeah. So for all you IUP students tuning in, 6 o'clock against Cal U, the annual Cole game, be there. For Director Michael Martone, producers Vaughn Dalzell, Kyle Condor, and the rest of the Big Hit crew, I'm Jose Villeneuve. Have a good week.